Did you know that by modding your PlayStation 3, you can play any PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, and even any PlayStation Portable game directly on your console? So, let me show you how. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. When the PlayStation 3 was first launched, the first production units were fully backwards compatible with the PlayStation 2 game discs. And I guess this was to make sure that the new console had access to a sizable game library, and of course to encourage people to upgrade without losing access to their actual discs. But as time went on, that compatibility was dropped, leaving the PS3 only to play its own titles. Now luckily, with a modded PlayStation 3, we're not limited to what Sony wants to do. In fact, we can go even further and play all the previous PlayStation model games. So PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, and even PlayStation Portable games can all be played either on your custom firmware modded console or one that's running the PS3 hen exploit. So in this video, I'm going to show you just how easy it is to access this massive wealth of great game titles. So before we start, you're going to need a couple of things. First, of course, you need a modded PlayStation 3. Now, if you haven't modded yours yet, then do check out either my PS3 hen video, or if you've got a compatible model, my custom firmware episode. Now, if you're not sure which method to use, well, the PS3 hen mod, that can be installed on any PlayStation 3 model at all. The custom firmware hack then, it does give you a few extras, but you can only install it on either the original fat model and then the earlier slim models. So for full details of which actual PlayStation 3 models are compatible, then do see that custom firmware video. I do cover that in detail on there. Now, once you've then got your console all ready, you need an FAT32 formatted USB drive, and this is to initially get some software transferred over to the console. Now, if you're not sure how to create that sort of disk drive, then do check out my FAT32 drive video. Of course, after that then, you're going to need some legally obtained game backup files. But again, we'll look at how to get hold of those a little bit later on. So to start the installation, we need to get hold of some homebrew apps. Now we'll be copying these onto our FAT32 USB drive, so do make sure you've got that prepared and plugged into your PC. So if you then head over to the Brewology website and go to the PlayStation 3 apps section, you can scroll down this list then until you get to the Webman mod listing. Now opening that up will give you a number of download links, and we need to get the full package download from this very top link. So this will download the actual package file, so you can put that directly onto the root folder of your USB drive. Now next we need to think about how we'll be moving game files onto the console. Now some of these files are going to be larger than 4 GB, so we can't use the normal FAT32 drive, as these only allow files up to 4 GB. Now, I've already covered using more modern NTFS drives to transfer games, so please do have a look at this video then, which is my full PlayStation 3 game installation video for full details. But basically, we need 2 more apps to make that happen. So Simple File Manager, which again you can get from the Brewology website, and Prep ISO. Now, the alternative to this NTFS drive is to use FTP. And again, I've covered that in a separate video, so please do check out this one. So in this video, the basic conclusion was that FTP is actually the fastest option, but only if you can connect your PlayStation 3 to your router via Ethernet. Otherwise, use the NTFS drive method. If you do need to connect over Wi-Fi, then the FTP transfer from your PlayStation is slow, and I do mean very slow. Now, the last application we need is a PlayStation Portable launcher. So the Webman mod package we've just downloaded, can mount PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1, or sometimes called PSX games, and it can then run them. But for PlayStation Portable, it needs some extra help. So we'll be using the Cobra PSP launcher, and you'll find this then on the Brewology website in the emulator section. So inside that listing, you'll see a number of versions, and we want the PSP Remasters Launcher Fixed variant. So again, you can download that. It will be the .pkg file, so you can just transfer that directly onto the root of your USB drive. Now at this point, I'll also just mention that if you do find that these downloads come down as archive files in sort of either .zip or .7z files, then you'll need to extract the .pkg files out from these archives and put those then onto the root of your USB drive. But hopefully when you watch this video, it will still be downloading these .pkg files. Now lastly, we have an optional step. And I say optional, but I really would advise that you do this. So this step will download all of the game box art for our PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 games, and it's then going to install those onto our console. Now mostly your console will try to gather these images as you go, but this step just makes sure that everything you need to show off your collection in full glory is saved directly into the correct place on your system, so that our game launcher apps will look fantastic and then display sort of full game images and box art and so on. So if you head over to this repository, you'll get to a section of the Aldo's Tools GitHub account. Now Aldo Vargas does an immense amount of work to make our PlayStation 3 consoles such great gaming devices. He does accept donations, so if you find this stuff useful, then please do consider making a small donation to help keep him up and help keep him able to do this great work. Now on the GitHub repo, you'll see two links for PlayStation 3 and then a PS2, PS1 image downloads. So again, these are going to come down as package files, so just go off and download those directly onto the root of your USB drive. So with all of those package files downloaded, we have all the code we need. So let's get that all installed onto our PlayStation 3. So if you power on your PS3 and then plug in your USB drive, and if you're using PS3 Hen, then make sure that you activate it. Then go up to your Package Manager option on the XMB menu and select that. Then go to the Install Package option and then Standard Location. You should see a list of the apps that you've downloaded, and we now need to go through and install each of these in turn. So for each one, just highlight the app that you want to install and select it. It will then go through its installation process. And once that's finished installing, you need to go back to the Package Manager again and then just continue installing each of the other ones. Now at this point, they'll all just install normally, but note that the two image packages, they do take a bit of time to install, as there are quite a lot of files for the system to unpack. So don't stress if it looks like they have stalled, just leave them to run through. But once you've installed all these packages then, we need to fully install the Webman mod package. So the package that we have downloaded is actually the installation application. So if you go out to your XMB and then go down to the Webman mod installer icon, don't select it just yet, because we do need to make sure that we install the right version. So we need to hold down the L1 shoulder button, so that is the little bumper button on the left hand side, and if you hold that down, as we then click X to install, that will make sure that we install the full application. So just follow the installation instructions for that application, and once that's finished, you will then find that we have installed the full version of the Webman mod system. So at this point, we can clean up our XMB. So if you look on the XMB in the game section, you will find that there are now two Webman mod icons. One is our Webman mod games section, and then down lower from below that is the installer app that we download directly onto the system. So we don't need this installer app anymore, so we can just clean that up. So if we go down and highlight it, don't press the X button, but if we press the triangle button instead, that brings up a series of options, and one of those will then be to delete that. So select that, and that should then clean that application off our XMB. So now that we've got all of our apps installed, we need to get hold of some actual game files. Now, as usual, I'm not able to point you directly to download sites, but they are out there on the internet. You just need to search around and you'll quite easily find them. Now do, however, be careful that you don't download any files that you don't have permission to use. Now, if you're not quite sure what that means, then do check out my retro gaming copyright video, just to make sure that you keep on the right side of the law. Now, the game files that you will come across will be in a range of formats. Now, for our PlayStation 3 games, we want ISO backup files. And these will come in two subformats. They're either going to be encrypted files or decrypted files. So the decrypted ISO files, we can use those just as they are. But if you find an ISO file download and it then has either an associated .key or a .d key file, then that will probably be an encrypted ISO file. And basically all we need then is we just need to have the key file as well as the ISO game file. If we put those both then into the correct folder on our PlayStation 3, it will then know what to do, and it will be able to use that key file to decrypt the ISO file on the fly and then let us play the game. So next we can move on to the older consoles, and we're going to start with the PlayStation 1 or the original PlayStation, because those files come down in a slightly different format. So these usually use a Q bin file format. And these are the files then that we need for this setup that we're doing with our console. So this means that each game disc then will have a .cue file and then either one or more .bin files associated with it. And these files then as a group make up a backup of the game discs. So you need that complete set then to actually get the game to work. So our PlayStation 2 games, they will either come as the ISO game disk dumps or in the same format as the PlayStation 1 with this .bin.q. And then our PlayStation portable games, they generally will come just as an ISO file, so we can handle all of those in exactly the same way as the others. Now, once we've got the game files, we'll need to get them transferred over to the internal hard drive on our PlayStation 3. So there are a few ways to do this. In my main PlayStation 3 games video, I used an NTFS formatted USB drive, and that allowed me to copy full ISO backup files directly across to my PlayStation 3. And if you want to use this method, then do please have a look at that video, and that will show you how to set up your simple file manager app and your Prep ISO app to get those files moving across. But if you're able to connect your PlayStation 3 up to your network router via an Ethernet cable, we can then use the fastest transfer method, and that is then using FTP. Webman Mod actually has a built-in FTP server, and we can connect to that over our network. Now again, I did make a full video on how to do this, so please do watch that if you need more information. In this episode here, I'm going to quickly run through the setup and copy over the files, but please do refer back to that video if you get stuck. And again, this FTP transfer method, it is very fast if you use an Ethernet cable. If you have to connect to your PlayStation 3 over Wi-Fi, then it actually is faster to use the NTFS system. So again, make sure you use one that's going to work for you. So the game files that we're going to transfer across, we do need to put those into a special folder structure, and it's best then if we do that to match up with our PlayStation 3 hard drive. So again, the easiest way to do this then is to create matching folders on our PC, then put all of our game files into the relevant folders, and that then just means that we can transfer these complete folders directly across onto our PlayStation 3 and everything will be in the correct place. So for our PlayStation 3 games, these need to go into a PS3 ISO folder. And again, all that needs to be in capital letters. So if we create that folder and then just drop our PlayStation 3 games into that. Our PlayStation 2 games go into a folder called PS2 ISO. And again, all those ISO files just simply go in there. Similarly, our PlayStation Portable games, those ISO files need to go into a folder called PSP ISO. Our original PlayStation or PlayStation 1 games, they will go into a folder called PSX ISO, and again, all capitals. But here, we now need to take each of our sets of Q bin files and put them into their own game folders. So in this one then, we're going to have our PSX ISO folder. Inside that then, we're going to have a folder for each of our games. And inside each of those folders then will be all of the .q and .bin files that go to make up that game. And again, just exactly as you can see on the screen with these folders that I've made. So once we've got that, we then have our options of whether we're using our NTFS drive. We can copy them across onto that transfer drive and transfer those over. Or, as I'm going to take you through now, I'm going to use FTP transfer over Ethernet. So for FTP transfer, we first need to find out the IP address of our PlayStation on your network. And you'll find this then in the settings area, on the network settings, and then in the network setup. And there you'll find an IP address of your PlayStation console sitting on your network. We now need to go back onto our PC, and we need to use what's known as an FTP client program. And the one I'm using here is one called FileZilla. And again, do check out my full video on this if you're getting a little bit stuck. So once we've got that up and running, we can just simply plug our IP address into this quick connect box. We don't need any FTP account details such as usernames or password. And if we press connect, you'll see that we now are able to look at all the drives on our PlayStation 3 console. So we need to copy our folders across onto our main internal drive, and that's then listed as this dev_hdd0 drive. So once you go across onto that drive, you will probably find that you already have all of these PS3 ISO folders and so on already sitting in there, because they will generally be installed by webman-mod. But what we can do now is we can then go and locate our files on our PC, and then just drag those various folders directly across onto the root of our internal drive, and that will then just make sure that all of our new game files get correctly integrated with the existing folders that are already there. So once you've got those copied across, and again, depending on how many games you're copying, this may take some time, but once they're all copied across, it's then time for us to get some games up and running. So to launch our games, we're going to be using that webman-mod package. So on the XMB Games section, go up to the Webman Games option and press X to select it. And you'll now see listings for each of the PlayStation models that we've loaded games for. So first off then, we need to get webman-mod to sync itself with the games that we've just copied over. So select the Webman Setup section, and then go down to the Refresh Webman Games and XMB option. And this will now tell Webman to go off and rescan all of those different ISO folders and try and locate our new games. So just let that run through. But once it's done its work, it's going to reload our XMB, and we can now go up and see what games we've got. So back up into the Webman section, and then if we go first of all into the PlayStation 3 section, so you should see all of your PS3 titles now listed, and hopefully it will have picked up on the box artwork that we downloaded as one of our applications. To play a game, you simply need to go down and find it, select it. Webman is then going to mount that ISO backup file as a virtual disk in your PlayStation 3, and then it will go off and automatically launch the game. So that's our PlayStation 3 games all up and running. Next, let's have a look at our PlayStation 2 and our PlayStation 1 games, because we need to do a little bit of setup for those first. So the PlayStation 2 and the original PlayStation, they use little memory cards to provide some data storage for the console, and that's where it would save all of your game save data. So if you didn't have a memory card, then it wouldn't be able to save your game, and of course you would then have to start every game session from the very beginning, and that's not really what we want. But luckily our modded console with Webman Mod and so on, it is able to emulate these memory cards. So on our main XMB Games menu, if you go up a bit, you'll come to the memory card utility. Now we want to create a new memory card, and this first one that we create wants to be a PlayStation 2 memory card. Now we have the ability to create lots of different memory cards here, and the idea is that you would have to play a lot of games, to be honest, but eventually these little memory cards can get filled up with game save data, so you can create multiple versions. So the first thing it's going to ask you here is to give this card a name. So again, it's useful to give them names so that you know which games are saved on which cards. Now, of course, we are going to save a number of games on here, so even if you call it sort of PlayStation 2 Card 1 and so on, then at least it does give you a bit of an idea of which one's which. So once you've given that card a name and okayed that, this card does need to be inserted into one of 2 virtual memory card slots in our console. Now, if like me, this is your first card that you're creating, the system will automatically insert it into slot 1. Now, once we've created that PlayStation 2 card, we need to create another one then for our PlayStation 1. So again, we just need to go through the same process. Again, give this card a name so that you know which one it is. But once you've given it a name and okayed that, it probably understands that you've already put one memory card into slot 1, and it's now asking you what you want to do with this card. So for this card, we're going to need to go back to our memory card utility with our circle key. We can then highlight our PlayStation 1 card. So again, it's the one down here. Either you've named it something, or if you look at the little icons that show beside it there, you can see that it says that this is a PS or PlayStation memory card. And then if you highlight that one, you can press the triangle button to bring up the options menu. And then of course you can assign this one into the slot number 2. And again, this is how of course we can then go through and swap various memory cards in and out. So if you find that you have got one of these memory cards filled up, you can disconnect it and then plug the other one into the available slot. So now that we've got our both a PlayStation 2 memory card inserted and a PlayStation 1 memory card inserted, we're ready to go and play those games and of course keep track of our save game data. So if we come back to the XMB and then go down to the Webman Games section, we can go into either our PlayStation 3 or our PlayStation 1 listings. And again, you'll see your games now listed. They probably won't have any box art. Webman, it doesn't seem to be really good at picking up on these older consoles artwork. But again, there are ways around that I'll cover in another video. So do look out for that video to make your collection look really smart. But for now, just find the game that you want to play by name and then select it. So this will mount the game as a virtual DVD. And of course we can then go off and play that. Now the final console then that our PlayStation is able to emulate is the PlayStation Portable. Now for this we will be making use of the standalone emulator app that we installed at the start. Now in the XMB game menu you'll probably see a listing for this down near the bottom for the PSP remaster launcher, but we don't actually need to launch it directly. Our application Webman, again, this is going to help us as it automatically understands that we have this PlayStation Portable game launcher installed on our system. So all we need to do is to go back up to our Webman Games section, go into our PlayStation Portable games list, and then simply select the game that we want to play. So Webman will recognise that we're trying to play a PSP game and offer to use the remaster launcher for us. So we can simply select that one. And that will actually then launch the actual application, which will try and launch the emulator for our PlayStation Portable. So again, we'll have our screen asking us what we want to do. So we want to run the PlayStation Portable Remaster, so just select the X for that, and that will then launch our game and start up God of War. So that's pretty much all there is to get our PlayStation 3 able to play every PlayStation console up to and including the PlayStation 3. And hopefully you've seen there, it's very easy to set up, and all we need to do now is really just start going off, getting some games and putting them into the correct folders, and then we will be able to get Webman Mod to launch those for us. Now, as I said, the Webman Mod's interface here is not as slick as some. So I will be doing some videos on some applications like Mana Guns and Irisman, which give you much better graphical interfaces for our games launcher. So please do have a look out for those. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, then do please click that like button, and do make sure you subscribe to the channel for more gaming, modding, electronics and making projects. I look forward to seeing you again in another video very soon, and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.